So Bill, just a little background for Bill Maloney. He was at Shell Oil starting in 1981. He has an MS in geology from Syracuse University, and Linda tells me when she was Syracuse that she does remember Bill being her TA. How about that? He was born in New York City. Hey, we got that going. While at Shell, Bill worked the Rocky Mountain Division and was region manager for Latin America. Bill joined Statoil in 2002 as Senior Vice President Global Exploration till December of 2008, and then in that role, Bill was responsible for all of Statoil's international exploration activity. Wow. Before retiring from Statoil in 2015, Bill was Executive Vice President, and he led the business area development and production of North America, and played a key role in Statoil's Corporate Executive Committee, and was Statoil's senior executive in North America. Now, in addition to these incredible things, Bill has been very active with volunteer work. He serves on ABG's Corporate Advisory Board. Thank you very much, Bill. We sure do appreciate you. Thank you. And on the Energy Advisory Board for the University of Houston. And has recently spoken at the University of Houston to the student chapter, the Wildcatters. What else? He also served on the National Petroleum Council and was a member of the board of API. Currently, he is on the board of director of Trident Energy and ATX Energy, and he serves as a senior energy advisor to Warburg Pincus. So Bill was recently featured in Forbes magazine in an article, and it discussed the challenges in the oil business and Bill's future predictions. So Bill, would you please come up here and share some of these perspectives with us?
I have no slides. As you can tell, this is it. Now, for some of you from U of H, I've been doing a lot of speaking at different universities, and some of this is going to be a bit of a repeat. Sorry. That's how it goes. I spoke at Stanford, UT Austin, and U of H all in the last couple of months. And I started every speech by talking about my career, because after all of these university visits, you always get asked that question. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight, kind of similar to what Susan did, but of course in a different vein. So my story is mostly about all the people that helped me along the way. And there's a lot of them, and I'll mention a few that helped me in my career, and I wouldn't be standing here today without them. So here we go. I was born in the Bronx, in New York City. My dad was a New York City homicide detective, NYPD. My mom worked as a waitress. My very first job in life was selling peanuts and hot dogs in Yankee Stadium at the age of 13. I went to Hunter College as an undergraduate, which is on, for those of you who know New York City, that is on 68th Street and Lexington Avenue, right in the heart of Manhattan. And I was a math major first, and didn't know anything about geology at all. That'll come in a few minutes. In the summer of 1974, I was 19, so those quick with math will figure out how old I am just now. I met Audrey, then to become my girlfriend, today still my wife. We got married in 1980, she and I, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And later that summer, I made the decision to quit college. And so I left Hunter and went to work in New York City as a musician. I play the drums, I play the guitar, and I play bass, but my main instrument is the drums, and I left to play drums in a rock and roll band. And I had hair down to here, which you can hardly imagine, right? But so it goes. Anyway, I did that for 2 years. And I had the time of my life. I worked 6 nights a week, and in New York, bars are open until 4 in the morning on the weekends, so you work, literally, you start at 10 and you finish at 4. And Audrey would come every once in a while, but not too often because she was in school and had a job and all that kind of stuff. After 2 years of that, there was a bit of a come to Jesus moment. And Audrey said to me, "Are you going to do this for the rest of your life?" And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about it." She says, "Well, let me tell you 2 things. One is you really should go back to school and get an education. because this playing around on the drums is like nice, but that's not going to help you through the rest of your life. Trust me. 2, she said, if this is it for you, then it's bye from me. And obviously I made the right decision, and I went back to school and quit the band. I still play now. I play in a number of different bands that'll come later in the story. When I went back to school, I went back to Hunter again. I took my first geology class. It was called Historical Geology, and it was taught by a guy named John Boylan. And the colloquial thing was everyone in the school called it hysterical geology because John was a very, very funny man. Anyway, I took a real shine to John and he to me. And it was him that gave me my first love of geology. He taught me how to survey in Central Park. He took me on field trips around New York City. There's 3 kinds of rocks in New York City. Fordham, gneiss, Manhattan, schist, and marble. So it's all metamorphic rocks. But you learn, right? I mean, that's what you got to work with, so that's what you learned. He taught me how to use a Brunton compass. He really gave me a love for the science that I didn't have before. And so I stopped being a math major, and I switched to being a geology major. And John kind of guided me through different courses I had to take and all that, and it was like a father-son kind of relationship in many ways. And it was great. And it really gave me the foundation for the rest of my career. I went to Syracuse, and I was going to go to California to school. I was going to go to Stanford, but love got in the way. Because Audrey had a job by then. She was, since I had quit and all that, she had graduated, and she was working in New York City. And so I thought I really need to stay close. And so I said no to California and yes to Syracuse, and went to graduate school at Syracuse University. And my thesis was on hydrodynamics. And I really thought I was going to be an environmental geologist for some firm in upstate New York or something like that. Well, obviously that didn't happen. Oil companies came, right? And this was circa 1980. So Shell came through and Chevron and Exxon, et cetera. And they all said, Bill, all the fluid flow in the subsurface is what we do. And you can do a lot of that in an oil company. And we'll pay you a lot more money, too. So why don't you come to Houston? Now, a lot of money is relative, folks. So my starting salary at Shell was $25,500 a year. The environmental firms were offering $15,500 a year. So for a young man, that was a big difference. The only kicker was I had to tell my wife, you got to quit your job and moving down to Houston, Texas, which didn't go over that well, but anyway, we did, and we came. So I started with Shell in '81 here in Houston when Wood Creek, which is now torn down, was first opened. I worked for a guy named Jim Clement. Jim was manager of the Rocky Mountain Division, and I learned more working for Jim in 3 years than probably anyone, technically, from any one period in my entire life. Because Jim was the kind of guy, he never told me what to do, other than saying, you're going to work the Powder River Basin. But he would come in my office, he'd sit down, he'd put his feet up on my desk, and he'd start asking me all kinds of questions. Asking me if I had looked at certain pieces of data, if I had read certain articles, if I had talked to certain people. And it was his way of me to get self-discovery about what it meant to be an exploration geologist. And he constantly did it. And it was, once a week we'd have these chats, but it was forming stuff in my brain. He was helping me learn on my own how to be an explorer. And he was a lovely human being and extremely helpful in getting me to understand the nuts and bolts of the exploration business. And it was absolutely terrific. I stayed at Shell for almost 15 years, and I loved it. And I didn't want to leave. But I was in Pectin, which was the international arm of Shell Oil Company, working, I had a bunch of assignments there, first in offshore China, and then Pearl River Mouth Basin, and down into Brunei, and then in Nigeria and Cameroon, and then Latin America. And then in the end, I was region manager for Latin America. But the president of Pectin, his name is Bruce Bernard. Bruce wanted me to go to South Texas to be an asset manager. And he says, that's the next step in your career, Bill. And I said, well, Bruce, that's not the next step in my career. I want to either go to The Hague and work in the New Ventures group in Royal Dutch Shell, because by this time Shell and Royal Dutch and Shell Oil were coming together, or I want to go to London and work in the economics group. And I knew both of those jobs were open, and I knew both of the leaders would be happy to have me, because I had done some spade work for this. And Bruce said, no, Bill, sorry, you're not going to do that. And so I said, well, then I got to look at my hold card. And he said, you do whatever you want. So I reluctantly quit Shell and went to work for Marvin Davis. Now, some of you probably don't know who Marvin Davis is, so let me do a little bit of explanation. So Marvin was a billionaire, and he's a very big guy, right? 6'3", 300 pounds. He was no small potatoes. This is a big man. But Marvin made all his money by selling his production in 1980 to Dome Petroleum for $600 million. And then Marvin took that $600 million and bought 20th Century Fox. And then he sold Fox off in pieces and then took the television and movie company and sold it to Rupert Murdoch, and that made Marvin a billionaire. And then Marvin wanted to start an international oil and gas company, and he wanted me to run it. And so I quit Shell to go work for Marvin Davis. And Marvin taught me something that the private equity firms are teaching me now. I'm going to give you $1, Bill, and you're going to give me 3 back. And if you're going to walk into my office and talk to me about a venture, if you can't walk in here confident that you're going to give me $3 back for the $1 of my hard-earned money that I'm giving you, then don't even talk to me. I get it. I stayed with Marvin only a year and a half. The reason, hold on, it gets better. So I'll never forget, on Easter Sunday, Marvin calls me up and says, Bill, we're going to Kazakhstan. Meet me in Vienna on such and such a date. I said, well, Marvin, wait a minute. I said, no, Bill, we're going. Meet me there. We'll fly to Almaty together. So I go, we get in his plane, we fly to Almaty, and we get a president's welcome. Every red light in the street is on, right, blinking. He rents the whole top floor of the brand new Hyatt, and in 24 hours we meet the president of the country, the head of the National Oil Company, and the energy minister. And then we're sitting around at night at dinner, and he says to me, Bill, I want to do business here. You need to find me an opportunity. I said, now? He says, yeah, now. I said, but Marvin, I've got 3 days close, a 3-day visa. He goes, oh, you just need money. So this is like out of the movies. He starts throwing $100 bills across the table at me and said, I got an engineer, a translator, and a whole lot of $100 bills. And I went off to the city of Aktau for 3 weeks. Now, the Aktau is right on the Caspian Sea. It used to be called Fort Shevchenko. It was a former penal colony during Soviet times. It's got a nuclear reactor that's Chernobyl designed, 4 clicks from the center of town. And this is where I went. So I've spent 3 weeks in this place, digging around oil fields. We found an opportunity called North Buzachi, which Chevron later bought. And I got on, and getting out of the country was a minor miracle because I had no papers. Right? Some of you have gone to former Soviet countries to get those little pink pieces of paper that says you've entered here illegally. I had no such thing because I came in on a private jet. And my visa had long expired. So I'll tell you, it's a brief story. So I get up to immigration, and no one would talk to me at all. Right? There's 3 people there. No one would speak to me. And so then this woman, my guardian angel, comes up to me. She says, "You look kind of sad." And I said, "Well, yeah." And I told her, and she said, "Just come with me, stand there, and smile." And so I put this big red on my face, and she starts talking. She's a Kazakh American, so she starts talking in a local dialect to these guys. And after a few minutes, they didn't want anything to do with her anymore. They said, just go, just leave. So I got through. Then I go up to passport control, and I show the guy my passport, and he looks at me like this. He said, "You're illegally in our country. You should be in jail, not here." I said, "Oh, great." So I grabbed the concierge from KLM, and we went over to immigration. Immigration is a closet with a 60-watt light bulb and a man and a woman sitting across from each other. And so we start talking. They tell me, "Leave." And so she comes out and says, "Do you have money?" I said, oh yeah. I said, do you have American money? He said, yes. And then she goes back in. She goes, do you have $60? I said, seriously? So I give her $60. Something gets written on my passport. And then I show the guy in the booth, right, to get on the plane. He smiles, so he's getting half of the 60, right? And then, boom, I'm on the plane going home. I had a glass of champagne. It's like 3 in the morning. They time the flights in Kazakhstan so that you get the first flight out of Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. So I had a glass of champagne and I said, screw Marvin Davis. I am not working for this guy. So that was that. And so, I did learn something from Marvin, believe me, a lot of lessons. So I left Marvin, and I had a headhunter before I went to Marvin was trying to get me to go to Texaco. And so I went and had breakfast actually, at a health club with Bruce Applebaum. And Bruce and I hit it off fairly well, and we're still friends today. And he said, well, why don't you come here? We want to have someone for Central Asia and all that. And I said, okay, I'll do that. So I went to Texaco. I spent almost 7 years in Texaco. There, two people had a real influence on me. It was Bruce, one, and the second was John O'Connor. John was kind of a tough, crusty Irishman, very, very smart. But what both of them got me, they helped me be an executive. John especially, because John was all about goals and objectives and setting goals and objectives that was going to stretch an organization. And how do you do that? And how do you reach down to lots of people to make sure that everyone's aligned and all that? He taught me an awful lot about that. And John was also about what gets measured gets done. That was his big thing. And so I only spent a year in Houston, and the rest of my time with Texaco was in London. And I was basically on my own in London in many ways. And so I got to put all that to the test, and it really worked. And those two guys were real big support and helped me a lot. It's not like we didn't fight and have arguments and all that kind of stuff. We did, especially with John. But the two of those gentlemen really helped me learn how to become an executive, which I didn't really have before. So similar to Susan's story, at the merger between Chevron and Texaco, you were only there a few months, I had been there for quite a while, I too was offered a job. Unlike Susan, I took it. But wait, so it was the head of strategy and business development working for Peter Robertson, who was vice chairman of the company. And so that's, in paper, it sounds like a great job, right? But I got in there, and it fit like a bad suit. It just wasn't me. So I lasted 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, I said, thank you very much, Peter, but I can't do this. And his words to me, well, there's not enough freedom in this job for you, is there? And I said, no, there isn't. And so I left. And in fact, I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. I was in London. Audrey was with me, and I was doing a handoff of the Russian business unit to my Chevron counterpart. And I couldn't sleep, which is very unusual for me. And Audrey turned to me and says, well, if you don't like this job, just quit. I said, well, I can't do that. It's, you and the boys, I have 2 sons. And she's like, don't worry about it. Something will happen. Just quit. So I quit. I quit on a Tuesday. On Friday, Stadl called me, through a headhunter, and said, the headhunter told me, I've been told to find you. And Stadl wants to run exploration for the company. And basically the job's yours if you want it. And there was a backstory to this. I had interviewed for another job at Stadl with the then CEO, a guy named Olaf Fiel. And it was a good interview, but they gave the job to another guy who eventually got fired. That's another story. Anywho, so Olaf knew he wanted me to do this, and so he sent someone out to find me. And but there was an intermediate boss, a guy named Richard Hubbard was my immediate supervisor, not the CEO. And 3/4 of the way through the whole process, just before I said turned on to the job, Richard calls me up and says, "Can you please send me a photo?" And I said, "What?" And he gave me some real BS line about why he wanted my picture. I said, "Okay, you tell me the truth, and I'll send you a picture." And he said, "Well, Bill, Olaf wanted to see if it's really you." And I said, excuse me? He just wanted to make sure, I mean, how many Bill Maloneys are there in the damn world, right? I guess there's a lot in the phone book in the Bronx, but there's not many in the oil business. Anywho, so that's how it happened. So I went to work for Statoil in February of '02, and it was like a blank slate. There was, at that point in time in Statoil, there was absolutely almost zero international exploration. They were drilling a few wells in Angola from the BP Statoil Alliance days, and a handful of wells in Norway, and that was it. Because exploration had been de-emphasized in the downturn of the late 90s. And so it was a clean slate. I could take everything I learned from Shell days, from Crazy Times with Marvin, and from my time at Texaco, and put it to work in Statoil, which was, so Statoil went from not on the map in international exploration to all over the place. We entered Brazil, here in the US, Canada, did more in Angola, did more in Nigeria, Libya, and Algeria, Egypt, Faroes, UK, Tanzania, Indonesia, China. All of that happened in the 8 years that almost 9 years that I ran exploration. And that portfolio carried through to the years that my friend and colleague took over for me, Tim Dotson, who still has the same job, and to drill all kinds of great discoveries all over the world. So it was a fantastic time. It really was. Statoil gave me 2 mentors. I was assigned a mentor. And they were the 2 CFOs of the company at different times. So the first one was a guy named Inge Hansen, who was CFO for Olaf, and then became CEO, and then he left when Helge Lund came in. And then the second one was Eldar Setra, who was CFO under Helge, and then is now CEO of the company. The quid pro quo was they were supposed to teach me about the financial side of the business through their lens. I was supposed to help them understand subsurface. And the extra added bonus is that they taught me about Norwegians, which jumping into a Norwegian company was a bit of a shock at first, I have to say. And I learned a lot, and they were extremely helpful in helping me understand culture and ways of being and ways of doing things. It was great. And I'm still friends with both of them today. I had dinner with Eldar last week when he was here. They truly helped guide me through my time at Statoil. So then I got kind of burnt out. So to convince the family, since I had been in London with Texaco, we actually moved back here to Houston. To get them to go back, I told my 2 sons that you can go back to the same school you were in before. Dad will take it on the chin. So I commuted from London to Norway for 8 years, every week. So I would leave Monday evening, I would get on a plane, and I would fly either to Stavanger or Oslo, and then Thursday and Friday I would go back home. And in addition to traveling all over the world for the exploration job. So that gets kind of old after a while. And I was getting really burnt out. So I went to Helge Lund, the CEO of the company. I said, Helge, I need a sabbatical. And his answer was, no. Fine. So I went back again. No. So when I went back the 3rd time, he said, you're going to quit if I don't give this to you. And I said, bingo. And so he gave it to me, no salary. I got to keep my phone, my computer, and my health care. Everything else was on me. And there was no guarantee of a job going back. And so after a year, so Helge and I met 3 times during that year in 3 different places. And at the end of the 3rd time, which was just before Christmas of '09, there was basically no job for Bill. And I said, okay, great. And in January of 2010, a colleague who was on the executive committee, Peter Melby, called me and said, don't cut the cord yet. I said, why? He says, things are changing. I can't tell you more, just don't do it. So then HR started chasing me, right? Bill, you got a contract, and you need to leave. You need to give us the phone back and the computer and all that. I said, well, wait a minute, Peter Melby told me to hang on. And since he was on the executive committee, they kind of had to listen to him. So I hung on, and then in April of 2010, I wrote a letter, Takk and ha det bra, to Helga, Eldar, and Peter, talking Harderbad means thanks and goodbye in Norwegian, that I was leaving. I started looking for another job, found something, and was going to jump. And then Helga called me the next day and said, well, wait a minute, Bill, I'm going to take North America and pull it out of E&P and make it its own separate entity, and I want you to run that. I said, oh, well, that's very nice. And so I took that position. At that time, Statoil was producing 75,000 barrels equivalent a day and had just started in the onshore as a non-operator. When I left that job, Statoil was producing 300,000 barrels equivalent a day. We're in Eagle Ford, Marcellus, as well as the Bakken. Have 8 fields in deepwater Gulf of Mexico, 6 of which right now are on production at over 100,000 barrels a day by themselves. We had a big oil sands business and a sizable growing business on the east coast of Canada. So that was a big job. $4.5 billion a year in capex, capital expenditure for a year, thousands of employees. So it was a big deal. Helga, and his part in this mentor story of people that helped me. Helga taught me how to be a CEO in many, many different ways. Things that I didn't know about how to operate and run an organization of that size and that magnitude. He also instilled in me a sense of social responsibility as a leader of a group like that. I mean, I got the constant speech of you're not just the leader of North America, you're representing Statoil, you're representing Norway, you're here, we have a certain ethos about who we are and what we are, and you have to embody that, both as a person and as an organization. And that, many different ways, Helga helped me, not only being a CEO, but being a responsible CEO, if I can put it that way. So I had a life goal that before I turned 60, I would stop corporate life as I knew it, the 24/7 job and working constantly and all that, and traveling all the time, and being up at 6 a.m. for corporate executive committee conference calls every Monday morning. I was done. And so I had a contract that said at the end of a certain period that I could leave. And so I told Helga, I'm going. And he says, well, what job do you want? I said, you didn't understand what I just said. I'm done. I agreed to stay here this time. I've done what I said I would do. I'm leaving. And he finally accepted that, and then we started a transition plan. And then he leaves, right? Helga went to go on to be CEO of BG. He quit Statoil after 10 years as CEO, as my boss. And I mean, he lands on his feet, right? He's going to be chairman of BP now, so that's it's nice. Anyway, so Eldar comes in, and then the whole damn conversation starts all over again. Bill, don't you want to stay? And I said, Eldar, I love you too, but no thank you, I'm gone. So I left within 30 days. I turned 60 in October of 15, and I left in September of 15. So that was the end of Statoil for me. I still wanted to work, but I wanted to do it my way, not anybody else's way. So I still do work. And as Charles said, I'm on an advisor to Warburg Pincus, which is a private equity firm, and they got the same ethos as Marvin. I'm going to give you $1, you got to give me 3 back. That happens to all their companies. I serve on 2 of the boards of directors, and I'm still on with AEPG as well as U of H on the Energy Advisory Board. So I'm going to stop there, but I've got some advice. There is no one path to anybody's career. Just from the 2 stories that you heard from us, everyone's career, no matter who you are, what you do, takes a different road. And there will always be surprises. There will be unexpected twists and turns. It happens to all of us. So keep your eyes wide open for all the change. Ask broadly for advice. Keep your circle, as Susan said, something simple. Keep your circle big, not small, and ask all different kinds of people for advice. Trust the people that are closest to you. They won't steer you wrong. And be true to yourself. Because I found in many of the decisions that I made in my career that when it felt good, when I was true to what I believed in as a human being, then that usually worked out well. One more piece of advice. In my view, you will never be successful in anything, personal life, business life, and the blur lines in between, without having both skill and will. And let me tell you what I mean by that. You could be the smartest individual in the world. That's nice. But if you don't have willpower, persistence, and perseverance, you're not going to succeed. Because stuff is going to knock you down every step of the way. And so having both the will and the skill is extremely important. Susan said honing your craft, absolutely, but understanding what you do and being as good as you can be at it is quite important. But sticking with it, working through tough times, being persistent and persevering through both good and bad, it has helped me tremendously. And I got to say, every great successful person that I know, all the men and women that I mentioned in my talk tonight, they all had that quality in one way or another. And so I think that can help you along the way. And that's where I'll stop. Thank you all for being so patient.